we have got the Snake. He's on the ladders. He's ready for a new opponent, but he's found a Smurf. That's right. It's time for Smurf Watch with Viper again. This time up against a Chinese player, I think. I don't know. I'm really not. I apologize. It's an Asian name. I just don't know exactly what country because I'm poorly educated. All I know is this is a Smurf. 58 games played, 170th on the leaderboard, 80% win rate. This person's a high riser. Could easily be one of the big players like Big Lee. All I know is this should be one hell of a good game. So let's hop in. It's going to be girls on Dry Arabia for the good old blue on blue. France versus the Mongols. And I'm kind of intrigued to see if there's going to be a little spin-up out of the Mongols. Because something we did get to see the other day at B specifically was the good old Mangudai making a return up against France. Something that I don't remember the last time I saw work or win. So kind of curious to see if that's the direction we're going in here, or if this is just going to kind of be your standardized Lancer rush in Castle Age as quickly as possible Mongol. I think doing it that way would leave you a lot more exposed. I actually think that what we saw out of B the other day is the way to still play the Mongols up against France. For those that didn't catch that game, he just went into Mangudai really early on. He got 1 or 2 of them into the Feudal Age, which wasn't too expensive because he paid for some of the stone. And then he harassed his opponent's Pro Scouts. And then when he got up into Castle Age, a really solid composition actually up against the French is Mangudai Lancer. So your Lancers are just like cannon fodder. They're front line, they're chased down. And French Knights really struggle because for a start, like, although French Knights 1-on-1 are better, Mangudai actually add a lot of damage in the Castle Age to a fight. On top of that, you have to remember that the French economy is usually not as strong as a Castle Age rush out of the Mongols because of how much additional gold they get via the step readout. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We need to focus on this opening. We already see that there is going to be Uber drop that the pasture built first. This is the popular build. This usually indicates that the opponent is going to have to worry about a quick Castle Age. Usually, if you see pasture into racks, like that's also an opening that works decently for the Mongols. But I expect Viper to go double pasture here and rush up as quickly as possible. With the distance between his Uber and his TC, this does leave a little bit of wiggle room for Knights to assassinate sheep. Yes, I did just say that out loud. I'm aware how dumb that sounds, but that is a move you can make, as well as burning down the pastures and the Uber, which can be a bigger deal. So yeah, second pasture coming out. Viper really likes this build. I feel like most times when I watch him play Mongols right now, this is the standardized build he's going for. And I've got to say, like, the way the Mongols are moving, like to this economical shift for a quick castle, I think it suits the playstyle of what Viper's been trying to do with this Civ. I'm intrigued to see if he'll start attempting to build the silver tree. If you do it, I don't think this is the map you do it on. So far, we've seen 1 or 2 very high-level players successfully pull it off and make it look remarkable. I think maps like Highview are phenomenal for Silver Tree. But due to the skewed nature of where trade posts get placed in Dry Arabia, like in a more kind of confrontational point at the front of your base, trade isn't really viable in my eyes until you're late game Imperial and you've walled up, which, of course, when you're playing Mongols, you never have the option to do. So looks like the French are going to be building the School of Cavalry as is standardized. He already got the mill down and has already researched wheelbarrow. Remember, this is something the French can utilize quite well. And there has been an argument recently as to whether you should delay your feudal slightly to do this. The reason being is that while most civs are on board with this concept of getting wheelbarrow as quickly as possible because of how much more efficient it makes your economy, the French are a rare exception due to them being a tempo civ. What do I mean by tempo civ? A tempo civ is a civ that looks to dictate the flow, right? They're usually the aggressor. They're the ones kind of constraining the game at a certain phase. And France's power spike in doing this comes in the feudal. So delaying it by 30 seconds a minute, like anytime you do this, you're delaying your knight push out. And you're actually giving a little bit more wiggle room for your opponent to potentially be greedy or already have ample defenses in place to repel any sort of feudal knight aggression. And it looks like Viper, has he got eyeballs on this? No, so he didn't go for a second scout. A little bit surprising here. It looks like the same can be said on the other side, though. And considering the delay on the tech up, I don't expect this to be a pro scouts play coming out of the French here. It's still a flexi option you have, but I think if you do go for the pro scouts opening as the French, that opens the door for the Mangudai rush we were talking about. The Mangudai are absolutely lethal now with pro scouts slowing down your scouts. It just allows you to very easily drive by them. And you have to keep in mind that the French don't have any early answer to Mangudai. This is why the unit was considered broken at release for the Mongols, is the fact that it moves at the same speed as heavy knights and you couldn't gap close. The only option you have is horsemen. And although we have seen some French players do that, like, it's easily counterable by the Mongols, because then it just encourages them to go into racks. And then if you drag feudal out, you can think about, you know, like spears with outposts. But also it comfortably sets up to go into man-at-arms and kind of comfortably allows you to station yourself in the midfield to get those outposts down. Because I think that's a critical detail. If you want to rock it as the Mongols, you need to be using Yam. Yam is so make it or break it. The amount of players I still see that don't optimize the economy, the military, to utilize Yam when they have the option to do so is mind-blowing, considering how clearly dominant this element was for the Mongols just a month ago. It seems everyone has forgotten about it, which is crazy when you consider it got nerfed. It used to last a lot longer, now only lasting 10 seconds. It's even more critical that you keep your Yam network sustained, and that means you need outposts or the deer stone on the front. So archer range being built, pretty delayed by Viper. Scout shouldn't be able to kill him quick enough, although, yeah, he's going to have to switch the villager out, I think. And that is going to reveal to your opponent what you're doing. And it looks like it is going to be double archer range as a response out of the French player. But remember what we said, this doesn't necessarily have to be archers coming out. This could be Mangudai, which are a form of archers, admittedly, but a much more mobile one. And yeah, it is going to be the Pro Scouts play. And Viper, is he doing this on feel? Does he kind of have a sense that his opponent's going to do this? Yeah, he does. It's the Mangudai. They're coming out again. Oh, man, that feeling when you're just right. It doesn't happen often for me in life, but when it does. This is really effective. I'm surprised Viper sniffed this one out without any sort of vision onto his opponent's base. I know more French players have been experimenting with Pro Scouts again, but in theory, like, you could just go pocket eco, right? You could just go farms. It seems like a lot more players, however, at the moment are interested in extending their, or rather delaying their point at which they transition to farms because it's so pricey. And keep in mind, whenever you choose to go into farmlands, you're sacrificing your ability to scale your military force, right? Like, it's a heavy investment, 75 wood per farm for something that's very easy to burn down. And another highlightable issue with going for farms up against the Mongols is how much value they can extract from you, right? If they just roll into your base from Maganel and they fire upon those farms, they burn them all, 25 food, 25 gold. 25 food, 25 gold everywhere, right? Like, let's say you've got this mill and you've got your nice, healthy 8 farms around it. If they splash attack with Mangonels onto the mill, they'll hit practically all the farms. So that means if they actually burn down everything in this infrastructure, farms especially being like very easy, they're going to end up getting themselves, what, 450 resources? While you would have invested a ungodly amount, actually. Like, the mill's cheaper for you at 25, but the farms still add up quickly, right? Like, we're talking about a cost of around 700, 800 wood. That's a nutty number. I think it's like 650, actually. But it's still a very high number. And it definitely is a huge deficit to already be behind before we then add into the equation the fact that the Mongols get paid to do it. Mangudai count pretty hard locked in by Viper. Usually the play is 1, possibly 2 Mangudai sets, right? Obviously doubling them up with the Uvu. Because they're so pricey at this stage. Like, Viper has gone very hard into this, and it means he's sacrificing a lot of his scalability. You can see he's floating a little bit of surplus economy, but he's nowhere near ready for a tech up. The good news for him is that his opponent isn't either. In fact, he's kind of doubled down. He's gone for multiple knights, multiple archers, and he's moving forward. Understandably for him, he needs to control the midfield to allow him to pick up all these carcasses. But look at this wrap coming in. Viper, with the Khan in position as well, he can move fast here. And the outpost is already in place to defend the gold line. Only 5 people working here as well. Raid in is going to be unsuccessful in the meantime for the French player. But the garrison is going to come out, and Viper, unable to do anything here, has to shift apart. And under range of the TC as well, taking some decent damage here. The Khan almost gets sniped out. That would have been crippling. It's really important when you run this strategy that you keep the Khan alive. I think it's also a big reason why a lot of players have stopped doing Mangudai, is Mangudai in feudal without Khan feel like a complete liability. It's an incredibly squishy unit. 85 health, only does 7 damage, and it costs a ridiculous 160 resources. Having the Khan is do or die. You need that maneuverability to quickly get out of dodge or that attack speed to extract value out of a raid line. Anything other, you just feel like you're not doing enough. It's never a good trade. So good thing he got out with the Khan, but still unable to extract value. The good news for him, of course, being the French player didn't do anything either. Really just tapping at the Uva a little bit and then running away. But that's a little bit problematic. You can see the numbers aren't really good for the French player to be out here. He needs to get up to about 12 to 15 archers against this count of Mangudai to feel comfortable. Like, admittedly, yeah, for cost, archers trade fantastic against Mangudai, especially with range as well. But you need that quantity to make it a good trade. Especially with this many Mangudai showing up. That's a lot. Charge comes out. They'll peel back for the moment. Some damage done. If anything, Viper has to force a fight here, but the Horsemen are coming out now as well for the French side. Everything riding forward. Archer's getting some shots out, and this damage is adding up fast. Meanwhile, the damage you're doing to these Royal Knights is negligible, only 4 per shot. I feel like the longer Viper does this, the worse it gets. You can already see he's lost one of them. And what's he killed for it? He almost gets a Knight, forces him to peel back. But with this many Knights in the field, it just might be a case of chivalry soon. The Horsemen are being built first because they'll be able to gap close. But after that, you could just get your hands on chivalry. The critical detail as well is the French player doesn't want to go into his opponent's base. He wants to fight him in the midfield, where the Yam isn't there. If Yam is there, these Mangudai are unapproachable. 1.87 movement speed is just absurd. Even for the Horsemen. You can see the damage. Good God. One just sniped out like that. That's a freebie. Line formation as well. I love this. The attack speed arrow also coming out from Viper. Splits him up, draws him in, and backs away quickly. And the damage being done that will not be healed here. One of the Knights is about to fall. Some of the Mangudai are going down, but the important detail is these Knights are better trades. And now the Archers are going to be exposed. He'll peel some off. He baits them back. He'll switch across now. But Viper just baiting his opponent, working and relying on the fact that he's stuck in auto-attack mode. And that means all the Knights are going to be decimated here. He can gap close. He doesn't need to worry about them anymore. Jukes him out, goes in, can finish off the Archers. And although the army is more pricey for Viper, he's now going to find value afterwards additionally. And the Horsemen, I mean, these Horsemen just feel futile. He's finally got the range resistance, but it still hurts so much. Especially considering Viper negated that by getting the Blacksmith upgrade himself. You can see it here. He has got the balanced projectiles, soon to get the Iron Undermesh as well, to make sure his trades with these Archers are even better. At the moment, he'll stick on top of it. No attack speed arrow. But after this, you have to look at the economical numbers. Both players have crippled their own ability to scale, and they are going to have to double down to replace the lost forces. Now, Viper does have a slight snaky edge here with still 7 Mangudai in the field, but every one of these Mangudai have a high price to them. It's that 120 food, that 40 gold, versus these Archers that, if you produce them en masse, are much more cost efficient. And that's the important detail, by the way, folks. He just needs to double down, and that's why we see free archery ranges. That was the weakness in that last fight, actually, for the French player here, is that he just didn't have enough archers to buffer these away. Because something that people often forget in the Mangudai is, yes, they can drive by. Oh my God, broken. What an unreasonable unit, right? Yeah, but what about their attack range? It's 3.5 compared to 5. So if you have a bulk of archers, Viper can't even move in for good trades. It's impossible. But you have to have that bulk in place. Going to chase in again. Going to find the scouts moving out. This is one of the problems, by the way. Because the French player took the fights in those areas, notice he's picked up most of the deer. Right, there's only one left over here, one left over here. He grabbed most of it. So right now, he's fairly padded, but the bigger issue is that Viper did not double down on replacing the army. He's teching up. And the French player invested heavily to replace the lost forces. Double Knight, 11 archers, trying to reach that critical mass. And remember, like, even if he did slow down and didn't produce this many units, you still went trip archer range. You still went for Iraqs as well. You've still overinvested in your military division at this stage in the game when your opponent has just used it as a means to leverage a tech up advantage. That tech up is underway. Step redoubt soon to be built. 17 people working on this. And this is where the Mangudai get a little bit lethal. You add Lancers into the mixer, you keep pushing Mangudai, and your opponent gets overwhelmed. But it looks like, interestingly enough, Viper has no intent to go into Lancers just yet. In fact, he's tripling up the archer range count, bringing it up to 3. And with the double production as well, this is going to be a lot of Mangudai out in the field. I feel like we're back in the beta days. Remember how this was the broken combo? We've returned to where we once were. We'll just have to see how effective it is in this day and age. I mean, it's going to be effective in the first fight. The count of Mangudai are going to overwhelm. I don't like the fact that the French players march forward like this, but because he saw the tech up, he has no choice. His numbers aren't healthy enough. He needs to extract some value, and he needs to do it now. You can see Viper can just wait this out. There's not enough forces to siege here. So much reliance on archers means that although you can take fights in the midfield, unless you build rams, you can do nothing else, and that's why he's building them now. it's kind of do or die. Like, he needs to extract value out of this investment. He has been floating 1,000 surplus wood, so this isn't a hard drop and loss to the French economy. But it does need to get value here, and it needs to get it now. Oh my god, Viper! Hey, man, why run a monk out when you can just bring the monk to the relic, right? Oh, wow. I don't remember the last time I saw someone do this, but it makes sense, right? Like we talked about, your opponent doesn't want to switch to farms too quickly, so he's probably going to play pocket eco. So if you can block the pocket ecos, great. So now your villager's here, you might as well just build a prayer tent as well, right? Thumbs up. Uvu now under assault. It's going to force Viper's hand soon. But Viper, he's gone around the back here. And it looks like he did take a fight, a bad fight, in fact. So he's going to actually peel off. And this is the problem. He's finally going for the stables, but this is so delayed. He needed this sooner. He needed the Lancers to be pushed out with the Mangudai. This is what we saw B do. It's Mangudai and Lancers. You cannot have one without the other. This composition completes it. However, if he can extract value off the eco lines, this could be big. The problem is that he can't slow down the ram production when there's so much surplus wood already. And this also will not slow down the transition of farms or the transition up into castle. The French players perfectly played this. And now Viper, he's going to struggle to find the value. Buildings are being burned. They're going to be forced to pack up and move away. He needs at least 5 Lancers to take a fight here. But with a few Spearmen in the mixer, this can also delay him a critical amount that could lose him the fight. I don't know if he got through that Uber in the end. Yeah, he did. It's 55 stone. At least he stops the double production for now. An outpost going to be burnt down. Lancer's going to pull back for the moment. Mangudai actually tanking the shots. Big mistake there. Unneeded losses. But remember, Viper, he peeled back his military district. He didn't lose those buildings. He just displaced them and moved them under the safety of the TC. Fight underway. Armor arrow comes out, reducing the damage to the Mangudai heavily. You can see how effective it is there. Going to force the fight once more. Archer count still healthy in the meantime for the French player, but the Lancer is causing a nuisance here. And remember, that Khan is upgraded. He's juiced now, 300 health, 11 damage per shot. It's adding up quickly, and on the home field, Viper will have the edge. But the damage, done. The delay forced, and after all that, the French player has made it up to castle, but now he'll be forced to rebuild from zero as his army is going to be wiped. Villagers even burned down the rams before they get through the blacksmith. So a few pastures burnt down, really frustrating as that's 150 wood each. But Viper survives this, and Viper is thriving right now. If you look at the income per minute, you can see on the numbers, food, gold, really good for him. The French player is at least competing on the wood front, which is padding him to go into farm soon, which he's delaying further with the berries, but this will become fragile very soon. Throughout all of this, there hasn't been a continued gathering of deers. I feel like this is a big mistake out of the French player here. Like, you could have been gathering these up. You could have built 1 or 2 scouts and dragged more carcasses in. But instead, like, there's Bambi here, Bambi there, Bambi every bloody where. Like, they've just not been picked. And it means that Viper doesn't get punished for ignoring pro scouts himself. And it's not like he was in position to punish you from dragging back these carcasses, because you had him on the defensive full for the last 3-4 minutes. But still, after all that, now Viper clearly ahead due to that pro scout scuffle and with the switch up into Lancers now. But the French player is not out for the count. If he can rebuild the Knight division, he'll have the edge. But what? No way. He's giving a lot of respect to the Mangudai. He's gone into Arbre de Trees and completely forgone French Knights. This is quite surprising. His opponent has built into these Lancers. He will get punished by this. Although the Mangudai don't get bonus damage against the spears, so the spears can somewhat protect you, the Lancers are still going to be a nuisance. And you have no direct clear answer to them, as they're going to raid straight into your eco lines. And that is food you could not be without right now. And this is the other reason why Knights are still good to have in the mix, right? Like, how long does it take you to respond with Arbre de Trees and Spearmen? How frequently have we, ironically enough, seen French players do this to other civs? But the irony really has set in here now, as the Mongol player is the one that's going to Benny Hills the French. I love this. And this outpost going down. No arrow slits, so the walling will be successful, but the walling is known about. It looks like the French player will spot out the outpost as well and be lucky not to lose the villager for it. But Siege Workshop being dropped. This is one of the weaknesses, by the way. This is the weakness of this composition that Viper is running. He has no ability to build siege out in the field, which means he's missing a very big and powerful, dominant point in the game for the Mongols. That can be fixed quickly, though. Just a few archers, and you could easily build up in the field. For the moment, heavy reliance on these Mangudai still. And this is what I was talking about, right? When you hit castle. Think about the difference here. He was doing 8 damage before with flimsy health at 85, I believe it was. Now up to 105, 13 damage. Ride or die, baby. And on top of that, he can afford the gold and food influx because his Pasha district is up, and also you have a step readout. And not only that, Viper's about to have Imperial. And the raids on both sides as well. The Ram's going to be prevented from taking down the outpost, so yeah, movement speed is going to be there. Mangudai peel off forces to the south, and now they have to respond to the east. And this is starting to feel insurmountable for the Frenchmen. Like, you just can't react to this. And it's all because you're stuck on static units. No knights anymore, no horsemen, nothing that can chase on both sides of the base and respond to the rapido aggression that's going to be there now. And it's about to get worse as well. With this tech up complete, that's when you can realize some full value here. The Mangudai are going to get even stronger in the elite form. They're going to be pew-pewing you down. You know, we don't see pew ponies too often these days, but it looks like it was dominant enough. And the moment that tech up comes out, the French player will wave the white flag. There's something so enjoyable about mocking the French about that, but it's exactly how it has to play out here. He knows he's too far behind. He's boxed in. He doesn't have room to extend anymore, and Viper is already knocking at his door, so he will give it over, and Viper's Mongol strategy will prove a little bit too dominant, and maybe Mangudai's pick rate is about to make a resurgence in our pub soon. Okay, so Viper really is on Smurf Watch today, but he's on Smurf Watch in the same form as once again we are going to have Mongol versus France, and this time Viper is up against the Chad. But I thought Viper was the Chad. I don't know what to think anymore. Let's find out if he can be the Chad here, if he can dominate again. Because once again, it's Dry Arabia, and once again, it is going to be France or Mongols. Now, for those who did not catch everything in the last game we just done, this lad, he went hardcore Mangudai. We're talking, like, you know, balls deep and squeal hog levels of I'm not going to stop. He was free archery ranges rampant. Lancers came very late into the formation, but it was the kind of the piece de resistance that made the difference, right? So I'm kind of intrigued to see if he's actually going to go hard into Mangudai again, or if this time we can expect a stable sooner and Lancers. Because I think that is the play that's going to be made. Chad, though, that this person, I can't find any data. They are a very recent Smurf. We're talking like only a few games played and boom. So this person is almost definitely Smurf. The fact they're facing Viper and they don't have stats showing yet on AoE net, considering Viper is currently 7th on the leaderboards, I have no doubt in my mind that this is really a Chad. I just don't know which Chad it is from the top of the leaderboards. I'm sure we'll find out close to when I release this video, though. So opening-wise, let's see the difference here. Chad, compared to the last French player, he does go 2 scouts. This is a little bit better. I like this more for the playing the pro scouts. I'm curious to see if there's going to be a delay on the Feudal Age tech up, though. Because remember, when we last watched a French player up against Viper in this matchup, they delayed their Feudal Age by a reasonable amount to get into Wheelbarrow at first. Now, Wheelbarrow is becoming very popular with a lot of civs, and France has some merit to it, considering they get a 30% eco discount, meaning they should be able to get it sooner than most civs. And their mill only costs 25 wood. But there is no denying that that is still around a 200 resource investment, or 150 resource at least investment, that could be going towards a quicker feudal timing. The importance of which for France is that that unlocks your tempo control, where you get access to the knights. In this matchup specifically, though, if you think your opponent is going to go Mangudai, you can argue against there being any point in that rush. And it looks like this time around also, Viper kind of got screwed. Generation doesn't love him. Notice that Uvu is nowhere near his base, and this could change a lot. It means now, all of a sudden, Viper's economy is going to be more stretched compared to what we just saw. This is actually turning out to be very exciting, to be honest. Like, some people might not be a big fan of seeing the same matchup again, right? And possibly the same build. But you can now make very clear mirrors and comparisons between the two games and how small things completely change the way you have to play it. Because this will change the way Viper has to play it. It's going to skew his timings. Because compared to before, when he afforded 2 patches easily, he was getting a lot more value out of those patches because they were in the Uvu range. This time around, it's too far away. It feels too risky. So instead, he's keeping the patches next to his base, which is going to somewhat delay his timing. Now, of course, he has got the gold right next to his base. So that does kind of convert it back the other way a little bit. But I do still think that this is going to slow down the castle age timing, and possibly also, more importantly, slow down how many Mangudai you can afford at a critical early point. Because remember, that's what it really hurts if you build Mangudai. It's not the gold influx. It's only 40 gold to build them, but it's 120 food. That is quite the heavy investment for such a squishy unit. And it looks like there is going to be no early wheelbarrow out of Chad. So it's just going to be an instant rush up as quickly as possible into the feudal. Well, I say that. Not really as quickly as possible. Only one villager working on this. I'm curious to see whether Chad is going to go pro scouts or if there's going to be horsemen zerging. I think if you suspect your opponent is going to build into an archer range, then you could go for the horseman because it counts anything that comes, right? Especially the Mangudai can get blitzed out in the field. And there we go. There's the third pasture. I believe at this point in the game, Viper didn't have 3 pastures last time. I believe at this stage, he usually had the archer range. Oh, like he begun teching up rather, and then he built the archer range. So you can already see a slight difference in the build order. And this is all informed by the fact that he wasn't able to instantly put the pastures at the Uvu. And now the mill is going to be dropped. So the timing is a little bit tighter. So this does mean we aren't going to get a wheelbarrow rush, but this could still be a pro scouts play. I think it's kind of a bait, though. Like, we've already seen how vulnerable it can leave you. I mean, that game we just watched with Viper, it wasn't even the fact that his opponent went pro scouts that made it so easy for Mangudai to pick him apart. But that actually can be your downfall, because when your scouts are moving at, you know, limp boy speed, it's very simple for Mangudai to chase them down and pick them off. And also, the biggest issue I'd see if you went pro scouts is this double deer right next to each other to the north of your base is actually a bait. It means that Viper can just show up here with 2 or 3 Mangudai, and he's already positioned to just buffer you away. Whereas if you had the deer on the top and bottom side of your base, it's very hard for Viper to cover both fields, considering how reliant your early Mangudai formation is on the Khan being present. So 3 patches in place, Deerstone going down. And I wonder if he's going to pull straight into the archer range. There is no pro scouts coming out, so it was all for wheelbarrow in the end out of Chad. And it is only knights. So yeah, this Mangudai is going to be still pretty effective, but it's not going to get the double value of going after scouts carrying deer carcasses. Instead, I wouldn't be surprised if Chad considers just moving out and dropping a mill on this deer site, because actually his gold's already here. So the way you could optimize this is you drop an outpost on the northern side of this deer, of this gold rather, and then it covers the deer and the gold. Now, admittedly, you probably eventually want 2 outposts to pad yourself here, but at this early phase of the game, like, it can buffer Mangudai away considering how flimsy and small HP pool they are. The Knight's riding out. Will struggle to gap close on the Khan, and of course, there is always the worry about Yam, and this is where the Knight play really feels crap. The interesting part to me, actually, is that Chad's going Knights, even though this Uvu is clearly away from any protection. So, in theory, Chad could have just pushed out Horseman, and Horseman also would have came out quicker. You can see the difference here. 29 seconds versus 18 is a phenomenal difference in conjunction with the double cost of a Knight. And considering really you just need units to burn down, like the torch values are the same. So Horseman would have served a better purpose here to zerg down these pastures and these Uvus and basically cripple Viper's economy at this stage in the game. But because you haven't done that, he will be able to afford double archer age production of Mangudai. The bad news, however, is that Viper is floating a lot of stone, and this is now a heavy burden on his economy because he doesn't have the Uvu subverting some of the cost of these Mangudai. Now that they are there, this is where I expect Chad to start to peel back a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if Pro Scouts, is now being researched, because you've got your opponent postured in, you've kind of got a distraction. You can somewhat pick up your carcasses, but it has to be said that this feels a little bit delayed. I feel like there was an overinvestment in Knights, and now this might offer up a window for Viper to move across quick enough that he'll snipe out your scouts, returning the corpses. Of course, we are playing with God Vision, so one important difference I will highlight, by the way, is that we know that Viper could make this move right now. He doesn't. He doesn't know for sure his opponent has gone Pro Scouts, but it is always a safe assessment in this situation up against France, because there's been a vast resurgence of Pro Scouts for French players at the moment. And there we go. Free Mangudai and go. This is the critical amount. Like, this is actually a really kind of nice padded point, because these Knights will have no way of gap closing you. Like, if anything, you need Horsemen. Chivalry as well. Chad. Not looking as Chadly as he once did. He's getting a little bit chody right now. I mean, this is very small energy, right? You've built too many Knights. You've now got the Chivalry. And in theory, it's nice if you stay away from the Mangudai. But how do you stay away from the Mangudai? Like, they move quicker than you due to the maneuver arrow. On the home field, they have Yam. In theory, you could use this to buffer attention away from your scouts gathering deer carcasses and then always fall back to heal. It feels like if you want to do this chivalry play as Chad now, you need to reach a critical mass of knights that can just dive into the economy of Viper. I don't think you can go for these pick-apart raids that French players love to do. In fact, if you do that, I think you lose the game. So we'll see if he does choose to invest in that. It looks like he is taking a defensive posture, and I think that's just the right call right now. Because any moment you come out into the midfield, like, it's a lot of ground for Viper to chase you down. And even with Chivalry, he can theoretically pull you apart and kill 1 or 2 of your knights at a time. Especially with this many Mangudai coming. This is the power creep, right? Like, think about this. Viper was surplusing a lot of stone, and he just got a chance to spend it. And all of a sudden, Viper's military count is up to 12, while Chad's is still only at 7. And you can see the issue. Like, even if you get in charge range, you're not going to gap close this. It's just so trivial. It just feels so bad for Chad. He's at least buffering time. He's getting these deer carcasses. The question is, what's next? And I think we already know what's coming. He's going to look for the tech up, realizing that Viper is kind of overinvested here. Going up to 11 Mangudai and not even being cost efficient about it, because in the early phases, a lot of those Mangudai cost the full bang, right? There was no value for the buck he was paying. He was paying the 160 resources, and he wasn't surplusing it with stone. With the outpost there as well, there is some weakness to this in that Chad has 11 villagers here, but the tech up's underway. And Viper, if he spots it, he could dive in. He could actually dive in with a maneuver arrow and kill a lot of these villagers. But now, in theory, Chad could pull it back quick enough, but the more important detail is if you just keep delaying this guild hall going up. It is a price that's going to be high to pay, though, because your Mangudai don't really have any protection against the TC fire. Here we go. He sees it, moves in. It's going to force a few of them to peel back, and he's in TC range. You see what I mean? Like, it's very hard now to prevent this. Like, the guild hall isn't greedily placed. It's close enough to TC that it should be protected. However, you can assassinate a lot of these knights. Maneuver arrow forced out so early. Viper, he needs value now. Tries to move in. Start stepping this the best he can. Knights are pushing him back once more. The villagers being min-maxed in the meantime by Chad. Chad almost complete with the tech up. Knights charging in once again. Not able to gap close and will have their charge cancelled. But he's done the right thing. He's padded this. 1 or 2 knights fall, but the price, the value, is found as the guild hall will be complete, and Viper is still not ready for his own tech up. And this is the big detail. Now he needs to get some archers out. He actually needs to upgrade them as well. A little weave in by Viper trying to access that tree line, but looks like Chad's villagers are going to group around one tree and turn it into a group activity here to chop one. Chad, with that 5-point eco buffer, he can afford to lose a few of these villagers, and it won't hurt his economy too much. Gold is going to be banked. Peel away. Viper looking to get in here. Straight onto the wood line instead, because that way he won't draw fire onto the knights. And several of these villagers will be going down as he peels away. Does cost him 1 or 2 Mangudai, but damage done. Important damage as well, because Viper, he wants to make sure both of them are on equal footing in terms of their economy count, because when he's ready to tech up, he can get a lot more value out of his villagers due to the power of the step redoubt. And more importantly right now, the reason Viper is putting so much onus on keeping his opponent in his base is look at the gold lines. You have one safe gold line, and then it's out in no man's land. You can already see an outpost coming down earlier. I love this from Viper, but there's no denying that Knights could extract a lot of value out of your step redoubt upgrade, because you're going to be out of place very quickly in risky areas of the map. Viper just making sure that wood can never be gained. But Chad, he's on the straggler trees, getting enough that he'll be able to afford a lumber camp on the east side. And then it's a lot more flimsy, a lot more awkward for Viper to move from left side to right side of this base due to the outpost and the TC location. And while that's happening, raid in. Viper being punished in the middle of the tech up. He's going to be forced to garrison here. Not enough room for all the villagers. Some of them shifting away as well. The scout is not there for Chad, so he will not see this gathering on the berry bush line. But a lot of villagers have nowhere safe to run and hide. And this is all because Viper has been posturing outside of Chad's base and not finding any value. He'll use the maneuver arrow now to try and return home. But by the time he arrives, the damage really is done here. The tech up is going to be denied and slowed down. And now the eco count, a 10-point lead for Chad. And also, Viper not producing new villagers because he can't. This is crippling. This is so effective, and I think Chad knows it as well. He's been standing here a while. There's been no additional villagers. So he realizes that actually, like, even if I now die with these guys, the fact that you're not producing villages is boosting my economy further. It looks like there is going to be a sneak in, though. Viper will look to complete the tech up, and Chad is going to react very delayed to this. We'll shift across now, but the Mangudai make it back home, and that means that you will be able to protect them. 6 missile resistance does make it a heavy duty to take down these knights. And although it's delaying a lot of this, Viper will eventually complete the tech up. The price he's paying, though, is so damn high. This really does feel like but at what cost moment, right? Like, it's hurting so much what is happening here. I mean, Chad, he is living up to the name right now as he is taking down the GOAT of Age of Empires. And Viper, he just can't get it. Look how long this has been sitting almost complete. This is painful. Any Mongol players watching this right now, their heart is breaking. Nothing is working. 24 of the 25 eco the Viper has is doing nothing. And the Mangudai do nothing. It's 8 damage against a unit that is mitigating 75% of your attack. Oh, and Viper. I mean, he's min-maxing his TC, but that's even less production for you. Viper is now being doubled up by France on the villager count, and this is all on 1 TC. And no amount of gold gatherers will now make up this difference. The step readout is a powerful landmark, but it's not that powerful. And Chad has to be happy with this. Archer's a little bit late to the party. We'll have to back away. But the archers will already be the answer to the Mangudai. And if he keeps producing knights and archers, I like his composition a lot more than the last France versus Mongol game we watched. Because the Mangudai won't be able to answer the archers, and the French knights will beat the crap out of lancers. It's going to be in critical detail that Viper gets outpost down to make sure he at least has movement speed on his side, which he has done. You can see this is brilliantly done by Viper. And it's important that this has happened already. If this had to happen now, it's even less eco working for him. It's even more debilitating for him to try and take this game back. That's even if he can take this game back. I mean, it's going to be a hard-fought victory if he manages it. Sure as hell ain't going to be easy. Knights chasing around. The movement speed really making the difference, as we can see here. But Viper still not able to get that tech upgrade for the Mangudai, all because he just doesn't have surplus resources. He wants the sheer bow limbs. He wants the veterancy. But your economy is just so crippled right now. You can't afford it. And the good news is these outposts are going to be frustrating. There aren't that many knights, and they take a heavy amount of damage. Remember, folks, outposts, the Springald upgrades do 60 damage. They're not like the normie Springalds that are down to 30 now. So every one of these hits hurts quite a lot. And that's why you're seeing him not dive in with the knights. He's only got 5, so he can't afford to burn down the outpost just now. Instead, he's going back into Viper's base. France uses irony and raids the raiders. It is super effective. And no, Viper, he just got enough villagers to garrison everywhere again. He says, please have mercy. No mercy. It's a French word. Don't use our words. He'll look to burn down the outpost. Under the TC fire, not an efficient trade, though. However, Viper once again down to 24 villages. Raids in on the other side, though. He's starting to poke and prod at a few himself, as he did dive in for the tree line, so made it somewhat of a trade. But it's still a dominant lead for Chad. Sniping out the sheep. Suboptimal gathering for Viper, he says, as he just giggles to himself. And if you want to know how bad Viper is right now, as in how bad his economy state is, that is a lot of sheep that haven't even been extracted yet. 25 villages. Behold and worship Chad, liberators of the sheep. Just for reference right now, Viper has more sheep in his economy, in his population, than he has villages. Just want you to let that sink in a little. Now, if sheep milk became a resource in Age of Empires, he'd be well set. But that doesn't exist. Well, this district here next to the Uvu might not exist for long either. And you can see that Viper just can't take a straight fight. Like, he actually can't go and deal with this. That's the problem he's been facing. He does have the veteran Mangudai now, but still, no sheer bow limbs and no upgrades. He's finally getting to the balanced projectiles. This is going to be too late. Uvu's on fire. That's going to burn down. No way to protect it. And this archer count could do a lot of damage against the remaining Mangudai. He's trying to bait him. looking for the value onto the night line. Chad will just shift the archers across and force Viper away. Just a measly amount of knights doing a lot of damage right now, and Chad is floating so much additional food as he begins his transition into farms. He can build whatever the hell he wants. And archers are just the answer. I can't believe we're coming full circle, folks. First with the Mangudai making their return, cheesing knights, and now just the return to archer spam for France. When was the last time you saw this? Because I don't know about you, I feel like I've been seeing arbaletiers everywhere. But you know what? A shield in the hand stops you from focusing on your bow. And really is making the difference. I think this should be the switchover, right? Yes, he switched over in gold now. This makes a lot more sense. Like, the food is served him well, but he should be generating gold at this stage. Like, that's his limiting factor. You can see on the income per minute, as Chad sets up more of these farms, he doesn't really need the guild hall producing that anymore. And now, even in the monastery, another kind of nice sidestep, the guild hall generating gold into also getting monks out in the field. This is a little bit ballsy considering the network outposts in place that you haven't assassinated. I would prefer seeing Chad remove them from the equation first, but he might look to remove more than that. 24 archers and 4 knights riding out again. Now, has the blacksmith upgrade been taken? No. Siege engineering has not been researched yet. So Chad might struggle to find an emphatic strike into Viper's base. Meanwhile, Viper, back to the good old raids. Feels like every summer he comes about for his tribute. And he doesn't accept wood, doesn't accept food, gold, stone, no. He requires payment in blood. And a lot of French blood at that. So many dying, still no textiles from Chad. So many butchered. They complete the outpost and they're all dead. Someone dragged the bodies inside. Oh, that lead is shrinking down to 24 now. No longer doubling up Viper's eco count. You can make the argument it is hard to keep doubling up, right? When you need to produce 2 to the 1, but it's still an important detail. Viper is slowly clawing this back. He's like a little kitty backed into a corner. He will refuse to give any more ground. He'll lay on his back. He'll show you all 4 of the paws. He'll say, come at me, bro. Probably mock him while he's at it. You're a Chad. You shouldn't be afraid of a kitten. Chad about to do his best. You want, mate, with 8 knights now riding in once more. Viper forced to fully retreat all the pastures, everything back. Uvu so far away as well. Viper not in a comfortable situation right now. And Chad, he knows this man's name. TheViper. He's a dangerous one. But not as dangerous as Chad. He's in again. Reinforcing the garrison. Viper, just as soon as he gets up to a healthy eco again, it might shrink quickly. Mangudai shifting across. Archers in range, though. Knights being baited away. Big mistake out of Chad. He will not be able to gap close this. We'll turn around and focus back on the eco lines. Archers split up to look for clues, and everything is being grinded to a halt once more in Viper's base, as everything but 2 of his villagers have gone idle. And the Knights will look onto the Mangudai again. Baits him in. 1 or 2 falling here. Those are pricey losses as well, so Chad didn't quickly turn around to get 1 additional Mangudai, but he is forcing his opponent away. The raids continue, and Viper seemingly unable to find a way back in this game. Every moment you think maybe he's done it, maybe he's recovered. Chad comes in with the backhander and says, who's the daddy? I do believe Chad is the daddy. He's definitely feeling that way right now. Viper. Can he do it again? It worked before. There's no way he'll kill that many villagers again, right? Right? You might be wrong. He's in. Chad not reacting just yet, and that is a lot of villagers. This is the disadvantage of having so many people in your economy. There's just so many targets for Mangudai. Brrr. Machine gun drive-by through, moves out just in time. Heavy hit there as he peels back 6 or 7 more of the villagers. I think actually this might be one of the few choices remaining. Like Viper, you should hard extract gold and just trade. The problem is these trades become less desirable very quickly as you do them more regularly. Mangudai in the meantime backing away, but even Villager's moving out. He's had enough. He knows the outposts are the reason this is a problem. I love that Chad's identified this. This is the reason the raids work. The Yam movement speed is juicing these Mangudai up. It also means that you never have to use the arrows. It's another benefit for Viper. So now that that's removed, he's going to run into problems. He doesn't have the surplus villagers to move out and build new outposts. He needs everything he can get back in base. And as these outposts get stripped away, his options get limited fast. My god, that military count is starting to escalate quite quickly. Knights riding in again. Everything must go on a coffee break in Viper's economy. Villagers, they'll run for the high hills, but they won't run quick enough. We don't feed hay to these horses. We feed blood. Oh, for now, there's some weird moves coming out of Chad. He's fixated on the wrong Mangudai. There's one right there. He'll finally realize it. No? Hello? A camouflage Mangudai appears. Will finally fall. Shift across, though. The villagers moving in. Chad. Oh, the Chad play. He's not only dropping the outposts, he's going to drop this berry count to 0. He says, this is my eco line now. We noticed there were no locals working these farms, so we thought we'd move on into the neighborhood. And chasing so many knights. Viper, despite his most slivery of efforts, I don't think he can hold anymore. There are too many knights in his base. 12 will be enough to burn this all down. No warlord play for you, sir. And Viper is no longer the biggest Chad. Turns out the Mangudai spam is not unbeatable, and Chad has the answer written on a napkin as he slides it across, and Viper's face goes into bewilderment. Nice attempt by Viper, but too much damage done here. As we do a quick eco check, this game will finish with Viper having more sheep under his command than villagers. And it will end in favor of Chad as he looks unstoppable here. What a play. So much credit to Chad, actually. Like, Viper, I think what we're learning here is that you can't just all in on Mangudai. I did highlight this before. This is why I'm a bigger fan of B's build. I think if you go for Mangudai, it's all about being a tempo aggressor and then setting yourself up for castle. But Viper, I think he gets baited into the raid value a little bit too much, and he overinvests in that Mangudai line. I understand the need to do so. You like, anytime you have a French play on the defensive, you feel pretty confident about the game, right? The problem is, like, you're not able to extract as clear a value as French would. Like, French in this situation, they dive everything. They don't care because we have loads of armor. Mangudai don't. Mangudai are a very expensive unit for very limited health and terrible effective HP, EHP. Because unlike French Knights, who have a redonkulous amount of health, they also have missile and melee resistance, something that is just not there for Mangudai. So you have to think of it, like, to put it in Dota terms, we'd have something called pure damage, right? You have composite type damages that get damage reduction. Pure damage doesn't. In this case, Mangudai are taking pure damage. Even if you give them the ranged upgrade, it's pretty much pure damage still. And it means that a unit that costs almost as much as a knight has nowhere near as much tankiness to it. While they are amazing raiders out in the field, they are terrible at diving the base. And it's why the way to optimally use Mangudai is to raid on the outskirts and the midfield, and then leverage that to go up into castle. Once you have castle, you unlock lancers, and lancers are the second part. They're your transition that's so powerful, especially against France, that I've seen utilized by players like B so phenomenally. And it worked so well for Viper in the previous game. But in this game, Chad plays so fast that he's never able to naturally arrive at that transition. And I've got to say, some of it does come back to that Uvu. And I don't know, I feel like a lecturer just repeating the same thing these days, but Uvu placement really does matter, folks. Sometimes you get the godly spawns, and sometimes you get the dogly spawns. And this one, that's a little bit more of a dog. And Chad's the vet who came to put Viper down.